What's up, guys, and welcome to the video on data analysis. Let's do it. With data analysis problems, it's all about being able to read and identify key pieces of information that are then going to be asked about in the subsequent related questions. And there's a few different ways that information can be presented graphically that I want to go over. So the first thing that you're going to see is information presented in a table. You also see information presented in graphs, just like our XY coordinate plane, so regular graphs. And finally, you'll see it presented in various types of charts. So it's really important to read the graphs very carefully and decipher what type of information is being displayed so that you can apply it to the question. So first, we're going to talk about tables. So here I've got a 4x4 table. I'm just going to give you an example. We've got in this table in the top column we've got student, grade, class, and score. So everything in these columns is going to relate to whatever the top row states. So let's say in the first column we've got Sarah, Tim, and Huzaifa. It lines up with students, so these are all the students. Then we have their respective grades. So we have Sarah is in 9th grade. Tim is in 10th, and Huzaifa is in 11th. Huzaifa is me, of course. And then we have the classes that this table is dealing with. So for Sarah, this is a table of English. Tim, it is English, and me, math, of course, my favorite subject. And finally, this is the relative scores in each of these classes. So we got a 98, an 82, and a 91. So if I were to ask, what are the scores of the students on this table for English? We would hone in on the only places where we have scores in the subcategory of English. So in this case, we'd be talking about Sarah's score and Tim's score of 98 and 82 respectively. But if we wanted to know all the scores on this entire table, irrespective of whether it's math or English, we'd throw in my score of a 91 in math, which is just barely squeaking by with an A-. Next, let's talk about graphs. So we've got an example here of an XY coordinate plane, and usually in these data analysis questions, we're only talking about quadrant 1 where everything is positive, usually. So here we've got an example where day is on the horizontal axis, the x-axis, which is you usually have time on the x-axis. And then for the vertical axis, the y-axis, we have the number of apples consumed on this particular day. So now we've got a little scatter plot, some data points. And what you notice here is the number of apples consumed in each of these points corresponds to a particular day. So we have maybe on day 3, it looks like we have whatever it is, like 12 or 15 apples consumed, so on and so forth. And sometimes you may be asked to define a line of best fit to sort of predict the behavior of eating apples as the days progress. And in this case, it looks like the amount of apples being consumed on each day are decreasing very steadily. Now let's talk about charts. So charts are various different graphical ways to display information. It's really cool because charts are often used in boardroom presentations. They were often used in the work that I previously did as an attorney to convey different points. So here we have a nice color-coded chart, and you see that blue represents families, red represents men, and green represents women. And this is a chart about pet ownership. So we're talking about the percentages of pet ownership across these 3 different groups for dogs, cats, hamsters, and rabbits. So you can see that for dogs, 40% of dogs seem to be owned by families, and around 33% by women, and so on and so forth. And if we look at something like hamsters, hamsters are almost, this is all made up information by the way, this isn't true, but hamsters are predominantly owned by women according to this graph. Almost 70% of hamsters are owned by women. Now we're going to look at a different type of chart, which is a pie chart. These are really popular. So again, now we're going to talk about pet owners in general. And so it seems to be that pet owners are predominantly made up by families. Almost 58% of all pet owners are families, 23% are women, and 19% are men. And all of these percentages in any pie chart should all add up to 100%. That's all for the video on data analysis. let's get into some practice problems.